Time of 5 o'clock. Mayor Kentner sends his regrets, so I will be chairing this meeting. And we will begin with the land acknowledgement, and I will turn the floor over to Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield, and I will now ask everyone to join me in a moment of reflection as we contemplate the business for this meeting. Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest around the table this evening? And seeing none and recognizing that the same can be declared at any point in time, we will continue. So we are here for a public planning meeting. Welcome. We are here today to learn about two proposals to amend land use planning permissions applying to lands in the municipality of Meaford. It is very important for me to note that the Planning Act requires that a person who may later wish to file an appeal to council's decision on any of these matters must either provide verbal comments today at this public meeting or provide written comments to council before the amendments are passed. The intention of this requirement is that only those people who have taken the time and the care to learn about the proposal and to engage in the planning process may have an opportunity to appeal a decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. While council is legally required to make decisions that conform to the county and local official plans, our guiding policies encourage us to reach out to you, members of this community, to hear your thoughts about the proposed changes. We have a variety of legal tools available to us that we can apply to development to help us ensure that new uses can coexist with existing uses with as minimal an impact as possible. Your constructive comments will help us to learn more about your neighborhood, which in turn will help staff and council to select the right tools to manage change effectively and in a manner that honors our community values and priorities. Those who have pre-registered for today's meetings will have an opportunity to speak remotely or in person. You do not have to be solely in support or opposition. It is okay to share your thoughts about specific elements of the proposal or to ask questions as well. While the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to questions and comments at the end of the meeting, in some cases, the applicant's team will need time to gather necessary information to respond. In other cases, staff may need to carry out research and provide answers at a later time. Follow-up information will be posted to the current developments page for this proposal on the Meaford website. We will open meeting number 1, 397531, the 10th concession, Moira Riley and Stephen Olszewski. Meaford Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment, file numbers OPA 35 and Z10-2022. I will now call today's first public meeting to order. This is a public meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford to consider site-specific amendments to the Municipality of Meaford's Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for the property known as 397531 of the 10th concession. This meeting is a mandatory part of the planning process, which has been set out by the Planning Act. Based on the rules in the Act, there must be at least 20 days notice given to residents within 120 meters of the property. Notice of the applications was issued on April the 18th, 2023, giving the required 20 days notice. Time to get started. First, I will ask Denise McCarl, Manager of Planning Services, to give a presentation on the application and to provide us with any public and agency comments that have been received to date. Denise?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm hoping that our presentation template is helping council and members of the public who are watching and can see it ahead of time, give them a few facts of those, the applications before you today and on all of our future ones. So this application is basically, it's two applications, one that came in a few months ago and the second one that came in more recently. And I'm going to go through why that is and what those applications are about. So the purpose of today's meeting is to hear a presentation from planning staff with some details, but mainly factual information about the planning aspects of the two applications. It's an opportunity for the applicant to speak about their proposal and speak to council and the public. And then it provides a forum for the public to comment on this proposal. So all three aspects are important. So the proposal is for a commercial dog kennel on the lands. As we all have had a chance to see the public notice, and that's posted on our website and also in the agenda. So there's an existing training facility building on the south side of the property. The commercial kennel operation includes a number of things that maybe aren't considered dog boarding, but are part of an overall business. And that training facility is part of that business. And they're also asking for permission for boarding of up to 20 dogs. There is a dog breeding facility proposal, and it also includes an outdoor exercise area for the dogs. The application also includes something a little bit unrelated, and that is a minor change to an approved building envelope on the property to allow an addition to the existing dwelling. So that building envelope was previously applied through a severance about 10 years ago. And the reason for that building envelope is because there are adjacent natural heritage features that were determined important and needed to be protected from development. So the severance was given for approval subject to that building envelope. And I do have a couple of slides that show what that proposed minor change would be. So there's two planning applications, just to reiterate. One is an official plan amendment. It's a minor site specific permission. And the other one is a zoning bylaw amendment. In the future, there would also require, if these two applications were approved, a commercial dog kennel license with the municipality. So this public meeting satisfies the requirement for a public meeting on the first two. There isn't a public meeting, obviously, on the kennel license. So the subject lands, I've just shown the drawing from the public notice, which shows the general location. And I'm pretty sure most people who are paying attention to the meeting know where that is because they're interested in the application. So there's a large property that the subject lands are comprised of on 10th concession, a regular shape. Here's another view of it. So this is an aerial photo from 2020. And it shows some of the surrounding land uses as well. So you can see the property there is kind of, a modified square with a lot of natural area around it. So it's got a lot of trees and there's a wetland there. The east side has a residential use and some trees and natural environment. The south has a residential use. There is an agricultural and residential use to the west, and the north residential and more natural area. So as you can see, they're actually fairly treed, and it's for the most part not lands that can be fully developed because of these natural heritage features. What I've decided to do is, just because the mapping for the county official plan is electronic and ours is just a low quality PDF, I've decided to show the county official plan map. The general location of the rural lands that you're seeing in white and the EP area The county official plan, it's called hazard, is the same, but it just shows a better quality photo for you. And so what I've done on this map is just show you some of the uses that are permitted. There's a number of uses that are permitted on rural lands, and you can obviously look at those later, and everyone has access to this presentation, so I won't read them out, but there are a number of uses permitted. Kennels are permitted on rural lands subject to a bunch of policies. And this is the section that is in question here. So B of the policies speaks to specifically building, housing the dog kennel and associated dog runs is set back at least 100 meters from lot lines. So that is one of the exception that the policies that this application is seeking exception from, to propose a different number. All the other policies they're not asking for a request for a change on. This is the zoning map of the lands, and you can see the lands are rural, but they have an exception number. That exception number is RU 248. I can almost not see that from here. My eyes are that bad. And that exception number specifically speaks just to that building envelope. It doesn't restrict the lands in any other way. And that building envelope size is approximately 40 by 100 meters. And then I've noted in here that all commercial kennels have to go through a zoning amendment. So we don't have any as of right properties that would permit a kennel. So the requested zoning is to modify their existing exception to add a kennel use and to determine the location of where that kennel can be. There's no change proposed to the EP or the holding H4 provision that you can see there. That's sort of a buffer around those natural features. And you can see there, it's mostly further back on the property. And I'm going to show the picture of the building envelope. So this building envelope is not in the zoning directly, but is part of the former application. So we can really get a good understanding of what part of the property they're allowed to use under the zoning currently. The rest they can use for passive use, but they can't have buildings on. So what they're proposing is to modify that north part of the building envelope where that long line is. You can see the arrow there pointing to that north side, just at the back where they would be, I call it the back, but closer to the back where their house is located, to allow them to have an addition to their dwelling that's not related to the kennel. It's just for the dwelling, the residential use. And then add the use of commercial dog kennel up to 20 dogs. That was the amount of dogs that they had proposed. Here's the site plan. So now we've turned sideways. So just so you're aware, this is now a different direction from the zoning map we were just looking at. The dark buildings, those are existing buildings. So the training facility is there now, the house is there now. And what you can see on the left side of that sketch is the addition that's proposed for their dwelling. And then in those other crosshatched areas, that's the proposed kennel uses. So allow for a new kennel building, move the dog run that's currently there. There's a dog run between the training facility and the lot line that's right on the right-hand side there. That's considered the south lot line. That would be moved in the proposal to in between the two buildings now. So the applicant is here to speak on behalf of their own application and provide more details. And this is just a little slide to show where we are in the process. Not to say that this next part will be significantly long, but just to explain that there's other steps involved. So once we've left this public meeting, we will be going and consolidating all the comments together and seeing if there's anything that we can do to mitigate some of those comments, if the applicant wants to make any changes or reach out to anybody, and we will do that as well. Once we're satisfied we've done all we can, we will determine whether we can bring a staff report back. And we try to do that fairly quickly for zoning, as you know, so we have to make a decision within 120 days on a zoning and OPA combined. We would bring back a report to council And council can decide to adopt or not adopt the official plan amendment and pass or not pass the zoning amendment. If they adopt if you adopt the official plan amendment, then we will send that off to the county for final approval. And then there will be the appeal period on both of those. And if final and no appeals, it will be in effect. And then just to remind everyone about the website, if I will post all additional information that comes forward following today or anything new that we glean onto there. So if, for example, the applicant changed a sketch or something like that, I will post that to the development page. Because this is an OPA ZBA, we do have a development page for it that we've set up. And then now I can, if it's okay, I will just do a summary of the comments received. We've only got 3 comments that we've received to date. So we have a no comment or no opposition or objection from the Historic Saugeen Métis. The Grey Sauble Conservation Authority provided comments this afternoon that the proposal is located away from any natural hazards and is not regulated under Ontario Regulation 150-106. So they generally have no objection to the OPA ZBA as proposed, including increasing the previously established building envelope. We just as note, we don't have comments yet from the County of Grey, and I've reached out to them just to give them a little poke to ask about those comments. As soon as we get those, and we will keep asking about those until we get them, we will forward them to council right away. Jeff and Jackie Westcott provided a very detailed letter. I forwarded that to council this afternoon. Their main concerns are noise impacts of the kennel and potential property value impacts. As these 2 folks are registered to speak, I'm not going to go through their whole letter for them. I think they'll probably more eloquently explain their concerns themselves, but council does have the letter in full. I was also sent this afternoon a few links to videos from Jeff. I will forward those links to you when I consolidate them together. So they were kind of coming in near the end of the afternoon, so council can see the videos. And that's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Denise. As was mentioned, the applicants are in attendance, and I will now call upon the applicants Moira Riley and Stephen Olszewski to speak on their applications. Stephen and Moira, would you like to step up to the mic?
Thank you, Your Worship. Want the reporter, Denise? Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon, Your Worship, and staff and people in attendance. As you have all reviewed, we're applying for a kennel, a boarding kennel license or a commercial kennel license, in addition to what we're already using the property for. Currently, the property is Howler's Dog Sports, and currently the property does training for dogs and daycare for dogs during the day. These are allowable uses. They're within our, I guess, the municipality's bylaws and that. And we felt as an organization, we were growing, and we were providing more services to the community, and that we would like to do night boarding. So currently we're doing boarding for our own dogs, which is a private, we're breeding Dobermans. We've been doing it under municipal license for, I think, 10 years now, almost 10 years.
We've had our kennel license for 10 years.
In the municipality of Meaford. So we've been doing that. We've been breeding Dobermans. When we first came here, we acquired that, and that was a permissible use at the time. When I recently retired, I think 2 years ago, I started training dogs that grew to become daycare dogs, like as one of our services, and we continue to provide that service. We have since then, my son-in-law and daughter have joined the organization, and we felt that increasing our services would be beneficial not only to the community, but our obviously the family unit as well. So as such, we started boarding, thinking that the license that we had received was a boarding license, and we were incorrect. So the county municipality and I had a discussion, And hence why we're here. Fast forward, I think it's 6 months, and there, a lot of comments. I think Denise alluded to it in that when she said that there was 2 applications before us, and I think that is a fair comment. I take no umbrage with any of the comments that the Westcotts make, fast forwarding to today, nor any concerns that my neighbors will have, and I'm sure that their concerns will echo the Westcotts. Whereas, much like any kind of business in the country, it may or may not have some sort of an effect on the community. The main effect, as we see it, is the noise, and we're willing to work with the community and the municipality to certainly mitigate that in any way we can. In the new building facility, the new kennel facility will have the current training hall has steel walls on the inside, and it echoes. So the new building would have plastics and a different type of insulation that would help absorb the noise energy. We did have and speaking initially with the municipality, it was suggested that we get a noise study done, and we did that willingly and on our own to as the first step to see if this was even something that we would be able to manage in our application. And we passed that noise study based on moving the outside run to the north of the building, keep all kennels north of the building, and keep them, with a wooden barrier, so to speak, and noise mitigating tools. So I think I can speak for all of us here that, the noise is a concern for us as well. To date, we have not received any complaints from the municipality. We've not had any noise complaints in the 10 years we've been here. We've never been visited by the bylaw officer. There's never been a complaint on our kennel inspections, cleanliness, or anything. We've run a fairly tight ship, I would think. And so, and I wish to work with the community and the municipality in, hearing what they have to say and coming to some sort of solution that would meet their concerns and ours as well. I'm trying, the business really does service a growing need in the community. There are not a lot of daycares and boarding and training facilities in Grey and Bruce County that are meeting the needs. And, I think we can attest that all the companies out there that are growing rapidly to meet these needs because of the want and desire. So the applications, other than the building envelope increase, which is, I think the addition is at the very back 35 feet and the front is 16 or something. So it's not a very large addition to the building envelope. Everything's within the building envelope. And we're trying to mitigate the the noise as well. And the other thing is that I want to point out that in the Westcott's letter, they talk about being over 150 meters away from the proposed kennel building. And I would argue that the intent of the rule, the 100-meter rule from the property line is well addressed within that fact of the 150-meter rule. The 150-meter rule was developed to keep kennel, away from property lines. The property between the property line and their property, and for that matter, any other rural property to the south or southwest, are of a significant distance away. I think the next ones past the Westcotts would be, I think, 400 meters away, and I could be wrong, but it's quite a distance. But again, we want to work with the community. We want to work with people and try to resolve what their concerns are. And the focus of the application, and I don't want to become repetitive, but it is for the boarding kennel overnight. Nothing will change as far as the daycare or training operations, because as I understand it, we're in compliance. So we're right now managing a training and daycare facility, and we'd just like to expand to overnights. So subject to any questions, council or yourself, your worship, have for me, I certainly will concede the podium.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Moira, for your presentation.
Do you want to say something? I'm sorry, I should have
I
asked
have
first.
nothing to say unless anybody has questions about the breeding part. It's a very limited scope that we breed. It almost sounds like we breed many litters a year, and I just want to clarify that I normally have 1 to 2 litters a year. Last year we had one. It's not a huge volume.
And that's
Okay.
good to know, Moira.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll
I
move.
was trying to eloquently say it's not a puppy mill.
No. We will move forward then. There have been 5 virtual pre-registrations for this meeting by members of the public. The first registrant is Alicia Mader, and you now have an opportunity to speak. Are you with us, Alicia?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
So yeah, I think I echo the comments. I'm Jeff and Jackie Westcott's daughter, so I own one of the houses that's about 100 or to 150 meters away from the proposed kennel. I think our concerns to date have obviously been the noise that we've heard from the dogs while it's been operating as a daycare. So thankful for more information on the fact that the proposed kennel would now have increased insulation, which may help with the noise because it is quite loud. And we haven't made any complaints because I think we're quite reasonable neighbors. But of course it is loud, and as the one member mentioned, there was videos sent in evidencing that. So I would definitely like more information on the noise study that was done and how that's conducted, and how there would be provided kind of evidence that the noise would be at a satisfactory level once moved to the new building. I'm not sure how that works, but I would be interested to learn more about that for sure. I think for me, it is difficult because we are one of the closest neighbors, and so would be the only ones that have experienced the noise levels, and it is throughout the day. So during working hours, the concern would obviously be throughout the evening with up to 20 dogs, and the loss of property value that comes along with that. When any proposed buyer does research on the property they're about to buy and sees that there's now a kennel license for up to 20 dogs, of course, that's going to be a concern. It would be a concern for any buyer. So I think that wraps up my comments on that.
Thank you very much, Alicia. The second registrant is Lauren Westcott. And Lauren, if you're with us, you now have an opportunity to speak.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I am also the closest neighbor, so I live at the same property as Alicia Mader. So of course, my comments are basically the exact same. Just speaking on the noise, I understand that we are further away from the property line, but unfortunately you can still hear the dogs just from our house. So the fact that it's supposed to be 100 meters from the property line, but the current building is only 3 meters, which is what I read in the note. It is a concern because even though our house is way further from the property line, you can still hear the dogs. So the current building is kind of an issue. Again, it's comforting to know that there are some sound studies being done, and that is a concern that they share and that they are going to be working on, because yes, it is very loud. And then same thing with the property value, just we have the dog kennel that is on the concession over. And I know that I have heard of people who were going to look at a property that was for sale not long ago, right beside the kennel. And they are a kennel that's legally allowed to run, and people have turned down that property and not put an offer in on it specifically because of being next to a kennel. So there is a bias, and I am just worried that later on, if we were ever to try and sell our house, that would be a concern, or that we would have to decrease the value of the house just based on that. So that's my concern.
Thank you very much, Lauren, for sharing that. The third registrant is Jackie Westcott. And Jackie, if you're with us, it is now your turn to speak. Thank you. Jackie, if you could, would you unmute your microphone for us? Jackie, could you unmute for us? Okay, Jackie, we will come back to you. And I'm going to move forward with the fourth registrant, which is Brian Wood. Brian, it is now your opportunity to speak.
Hi.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Brian, please go ahead.
Hey, I'm Brian. I live next door to the Howlers. I completely have the same things that Lauren and Alicia were saying. I'm more worried about the property value of the house if we ever did decide to sell. I'm just that's where I kind of stand with it. Like, I got nothing. They pretty well said it pretty good.
Okay, thank you very much for adding that, Brian. We will move forward with the fifth registrant, Jeff Westcott. Jeff, please go ahead. Hello, Jeff, are you there?
Okay.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello, Jeff.
Hi. Yeah, so I reiterate everything that's said, and it is just loud. And we haven't complained because it was somewhat sporadic with the Dobermans over the years. And now it's just gotten to be a lot more frequent. And we just built another house, and even at that 150 meters, we can clearly hear the dogs. I also am interested in the insulation and being able to make it quieter, and would be all for that. It would be wonderful if you could make a commercial kennel that wasn't noisy, but it would still take years for the stigma of being beside a kennel to go away. So even if you were to make it noise proof, there would still be a stigma attached to the property until many years people have determined that it's not an issue because they make kennels quiet now. But so again, just in summary, concerned about the noise and the property value.
Thank you very much, Jeff. We will come back to Jackie Westcott. Jackie, are you with us at this point in time?
Yes, I am.
There you are. Thank you. Please go ahead, Jackie.
Okay. I appreciate you having this council meeting. I do want to say.
Jackie, I'm going to have to ask you to speak up for us, or to speak closer to your microphone. Okay. Okay, so the advice, Jackie, is you're speaking from Jeff's microphone? Can you unmute your own microphone, Jackie?
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Okay.
Let's see, only this time.
All right. When Mr. Ochowski first moved in, he had this breeding showing kennel. We did have issues with the barking at the time. He's had dogs get out. He's come out and been mean to my horses because one of his dogs have run into the area. I did send them an email at that time complaining, stating that we weren't going to be good neighbors if this kind of stuff continued. So there were issues. We have always worked with our neighbors. We've never had any bad neighbors. But Mr. Ochowski, at one point, I came over to the property line where he has the building built now. And I was on my property putting up electric fencing for my horses to be in the daytime. And he came over to tell me that I can't electrify that because it might be harmful for his dogs, because his dogs were off of the property many times or just running loose, didn't listen to or respond to come back. I've been on horses where it's been unsafe because of his dogs charging. And then since last fall, he's been operating this business without even a license to do so. And we've listened to the noise with these dogs, and we were going to complain. And then this planning issue all came about with the council meeting and everything. So this has been an ongoing issue with him before other people's dogs were even arriving. Now, from the time someone drops off their one dog, all the other dogs are barking and carrying on. His thing about noise reduction, well, dogs need to get outside to do their business and stuff. So I'd like to know how that's going to be proposed. He'd be having to let a dog out singly every time and then hope it's not a barker. So I don't see how this whole plan is going to work. He built that building on purpose to run this business. So he's done things backwards. Instead of asking for permission to run this business, he went ahead and built this building. And then now is asking for us to concede and switch things and allow bylaws. We own that property. We sold it to Mr. Ochowski. We were told at the time from the Conservation Authority and what we could only build on that one little parcel where he has his house built, saying that we had rare birds. We had to do an impact study. There were all kinds of reasons we couldn't build. We couldn't take down 10 trees to tuck a house in there. To get away because these birds, these rare birds and whatever. So we decided to sell the property, never expecting this is what we were selling, you know, to and for. We've always gotten along with Steve, but this is kind of, no, I'm not willing. And even if it's approved, I am wanting to appeal this. Because it has and it will lower our property values already with what he's got built up there. There's buildings and kennel runs all over the place. I think his latest kennel run, it even is part on our property. My husband allowed him to do berms off of that, thinking, not knowing this is what he was planning, this daycare facility. You know, Steve has never come to us, asked us about the noise. If this was something we were willing to do, we've always been a good neighbor to him. So it is what it is. And Mr. Ochowski, I know he was looking over on the 8th concession where there's the dog kennel to purchase dogs, and he was looking at the property next to it to purchase, or he was looking at ours. He picked ours. Well, he should have picked the one over there if this is what he had planned, a dog breeding facility and then daycare and training. Like, it just doesn't work here for us.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie, for sharing your comments with us.
Okay, thank you.
There being no other pre-registrations for this meeting by members of the public, therefore I will ask if there are any members of the public present who wish to speak. And seeing, we will come back to you, Stephen. So seeing no one at the moment, I will next ask if any members of council would like to provide input. Councillor Uhrig.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one quick question. You had indicated that you did get a noise study completed. I'm just wondering, A, who did it? And B, don't know whether you can share that information, because that's obviously going to have great impact on this whole thing by the sounds of it. Plus the mitigation factors you're talking about, insulating the building to a certain degree, what exactly, whether the noise study consultant, whether they've talked about what mitigating factors that would have, et cetera, et cetera. So it all seems to be rather important information in this, having bearing on this.
There you go. I should have, having been a court reporter for 10 years. So the noise study was done by a acoustical engineer. So as we all, it's the highest degree you can get in this sort of thing, being an engineer. He did the Toronto SPCA buildings. He does them all over the place. There is a copy on file with the municipality, and I have certainly shared the document with everybody. And it speaks to there's the maximum amount of noise that can emit from a facility inside and outside. The noise was outside and inside tested, and then it was done at various points on the property. And there's a and I'm not going to get into the statistical or the complicated aspects of it, but he was there for an extensive period of time. He studied different areas on it while dogs were barking and when dogs weren't barking. And then it was evaluated that we complied, as there is a standard that I'm not completely aware of or wasn't aware of, that for this sort of building to go up. So the document is available, and certainly it was in compliance, providing I did X, Y, and Z, which we are quite willing to do. Your other question was, sorry?
Just the impact of that with mitigation of the special installation you were talking about. Presumably you discussed with the consultant as well, what would be required to help mitigate that?
Yeah, so turning the building from, I think the diagram right now shows it as an L coming off the existing building, turning it, actually the building 180 degrees. So all the kennels coming off the building would be north, and that the existing training hall would block any noise from traveling south. So there wouldn't, because there's I can't remember how many meters. I think it's 300 meters to the road that I own of the forest, and that would mitigate that. Then the insulation, we're investigating and working with any consultants with mitigating the noise that's going to travel across the property line. And certainly we want to work with our neighbors. I certainly I'm surprised, but I'm not willing to work with my neighbors to the south. I am disappointed that we couldn't get together and have this conversation. And yes, I probably should have knocked on the door, but I thought I had.
Could I just point out that the existing building will then only be training, so there will not be daycare. There will not be the barking and that they're hearing. It's usually brief on drop off and pickup, and to mitigate that, we will start just going out and meeting, bringing the dogs in, because it's when a new person comes in, they get all excited, right? But that when the new building is up, then that building won't be for daycare.
The existing training
Yeah,
building.
it'll just be training, and there's no parking then.
And some of the things we're gonna implement is right now, you drive up to the building, the dogs have the ability to see their owners and they get excited. In the new building, there would be a reception area and you would go in and then the staff member would go back, get the dog and bring it forward. So there wouldn't be that kind of it's like daycare children, right? Seeing their mom and dad at the fence, right? And they all get excited. So, it's very much like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cool to say that. Before I say anything, I should mention that because I do have a business in the pet industry, I did consult with the Integrity Commissioner, and he said that I'm free to speak on this issue because I don't have any pecuniary interest in this. I do own a daycare, a doggy daycare, and I know how loud it can be. I also understand how effective some of these insulating materials are for indoor noise mitigation. So I understand that is a fairly easy problem to remedy. My concern is, how do you plan on mitigating noise outdoors? There's not a lot that can be done about that. So I'd be curious to see what you guys have to say about doing that. And then also when we look at Meaford's noise bylaws, it is part 3E of Meaford's noise bylaws talks about the persistent sound or noise made by any domestic pet or any animals kept for commercial purposes likely to disturb the peace, quiet, comfort, or repose of any inhabitant in the same building or in the neighborhood at all times. So while I see the solution to indoor noise is probably not a tall task, I'm just curious how you plan on mitigating outdoor noise. And my daycare has a maximum capacity of 20 dogs as well, and it's very, very loud. We don't have an outdoor area, but I know if we had an outdoor area, that sound would travel quite a way. So those are just my thoughts and concerns. Oh, I just want to say though, Howler's Dog Sports does have a tremendous reputation in the pet industry around here. So I just wanted to throw that out there, is that as a business, you guys are in very good standing in the pet industry around here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Part of having the dogs in for daycare, it's not a regular daycare where they're just being thrown all together and running amok. It involves training as well. So part of that training when they're outside is not barking. I am not a fan of barking, and my dogs are probably the ones the neighbors are hearing, but that's all part of why they're there and what we're trying to teach them. Things like waiting at the gate and not running when their parents come and all of that. They go out in groups. There are certain breeds that will always bark. And so you just have to, they have to go out and they have to play, but you limit it. And there's always, someone there within the group to stop them from excessive barking. Border collies, they're difficult, but it's a work in progress. And in the end, the dogs go home and then they're within their own communities and they're a lot quieter. And those neighbors are not complaining that their dogs are barking. So I think that the outside, probably isn't as noisy as it could be when it's like inside and they're not able to kind of get out and stretch. We have a large fenced in field that we take them up to and let them, throw a ball, let them play, and take them for trail walks individually. Some go into town for training. They're not just all open the door and let them all outside. Yeah, because that would be a lot of noise. Yeah.
And counterproductive, right? It's hard to control 20 dogs running, as together. It's not really a safe environment for handlers or the dogs. You try to break them up in small packs, you rotate them, they all get quiet time, and we manage the noise. Unfortunately, the one of the areas of contention here that we heard from the Westcotts and their family was that, you know, they're hearing from the southern area where we have a outdoor running along the property line, and that is within the property line. Years ago, when I purchased the property, I had the property professionally surveyed, and at every stake we put a T-bar in. So, you know, I apologize to them if there's confusion on the property line, but I can certainly, you know, wherever I forget what they call it, you know, the 1x1s in the middle of the property, and the 2 1.5 by 1.5s at the corners, they're all clearly labeled, and we put T-bars in everywhere. So, you know, if there's any confusion, I'm more than happy to take a walk with them. I'm certainly anybody in the neighborhood who wants to text us or emails us, because if I'm not aware of it, and, you know, Andy runs the daycare in the area, and he'll attest that I get testy when we're hearing dogs barking, because it is bothersome to us, it's bothersome to the community, and we certainly agree that there's bylaws in place, and as Brandon just reiterated, he's absolutely right, you know, that we have staff to do that. We, you know, it has to be followed, it has to be enforced, and if we're missing the ball on that, we'll certainly pick it up. But the new plan is to keep all the dogs to the north and away from anybody else.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. I have 2 questions, if I may. Currently, when folks come to your facility, they drop off their dog. During the day, you train them, look after them. Then they come in the evening, they pick them up and they take them home.
Correct, yes.
You do that 7 days a week?
No, just 5 days a week.
5 days a week. Okay,
I train on Saturdays, but we don't do daycare on Saturdays.
okay. So then I heard a remark which to me was very concerning, that the dogs were at some point loose and there was some horses that were involved, and that can make for some very serious situation.
Absolutely.
So an old adage is that good fences make good neighbors.
Yes.
What do you have in mind for fences to, if a dog or dogs became free, not to engage with not only horses, but other people and other livestock? Thank you.
So I agree with all those statements, and it has been a conversation within our that once we're approved in that, we're planning on putting a fence up between us as a secondary. So every I'm going to call them paddock areas where the dogs run and play are going to have a fence, and then we're planning on fencing in the 5 acres. I don't have the picture up, but if you looked at the white area that Denise had posted earlier on, that's approximately 5 acres, 4.5 acres. We plan on fencing that as well as a secondary stop. The incidents where all of our dogs are show dogs. So
I can address this. Actually, there was one incident where my Doberman got out of the house. He has 0 recall. Anyway, he's passed away since, but he got out. Their horses got out regularly as well, and he ran after them. He didn't do anything to them. They were on our front lawn. He went over to their house with them, and we walked over and got them. That was the one and only time. My dogs are worth a lot of money. They go everywhere across the world, and I would not ever just open the front door and let them run amok and maybe get hit by a car. They're also very friendly. They're, you know, St. John's ambulance dogs, therapy dogs. They're canine good neighbor. I'm a canine good neighbor evaluator. You know, it's just not.
Thank you, Maureen.
Sorry, I know the Westcotts love their horses, and rightfully so. We had hunter jumpers when we lived in Mansfield, so I very much understand that. Unfortunately, there's been a few incidents, And, you know, and sometimes things happen and it's not, you know, we all try to, get along, and I thought we had. But certainly, you know, I still wish we do, because it's important to me that as Ms. Westcott said, you know, is to have good neighbors, and that's what we want to be with them. So I think there's some healing that has to be done there that we're willing to work with them on, and you know, hopefully I'll reach out to them. We can remedy some of these concerns, because certainly I don't want to have bad neighbors.
And that's good to hear. Councillor Bartley, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like the idea of the insulation, the building insulated for sound. It keeps the sound in. It also keeps the heat in.
Yeah.
Are you going to put a commercial air conditioner in so that the doors didn't have to be open all summer?
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. In the training facility, we just have big fans and we move air around. But in the new facility, I've already engaged with cooks. We're going to have a water reclaiming thing for the environment. So we're going to take rainwater, we're going to store it and use it for wash down. We're planning on doing a fully insulated base building, so it won't be like on any temperature of 25, 27 degrees, 25, 26 degrees, depending on the humidity. We really don't want our dogs outside anyway. So the building will be made to accommodate that. And always the indoor kennels will always be air conditioned as well. So there will be a limited amount of, except for exercise and that through the summer. Winter months are obviously obvious. They go out, they get exercise, they come in. And I'm trying to think now of all the other environmental things I'm looking at, because there's some really great initiatives right now.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Greenfield?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Keaveney, and thanks, folks, for your information. We've talked about noise, and we've talked about insulation. It's not the nicest subject to touch on, but an animal waste management plan. If you do end up having 15 to 20 dogs, unfortunately, we have animal waste management problems throughout our municipality. How can you tell us how you're going to?
Absolutely. So that is part of the application process. Oh, I'm sorry, Denise.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It's a great question. I think it's valid, but I do want to just mention that that is part of the kennel licensing process. So we don't tend to get a lot of detail in the zoning application about waste management, but we know that it's part of the kennel license. And then I was just going to suggest that we note the questions and maybe allow the applicants to respond to them at the end. And then that way we're not getting into too much of a back and forth. It's just a suggestion.
And I appreciate that, Denise. Thank you.
But I can certainly answer it. Right now, we're contracted to Miller Waste to manage that.
Thank you. Denise, I did have a question for you, if I may. Recognizing that we are talking about 20 dogs at this particular kennel, and I understand from the applicants that they're looking to breed once or twice a year. So does there need to be language within that to allow for the additional puppies for the 8-10 weeks during the times when breeding is happening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So typically, at least in the ones that I've processed previously, we have not counted the litter specifically. So we've counted the breeding females or any other males that they use for breeding as part of the kennel, as the adult dogs, and the juvenile dogs are not counted because they're only there for a small period of time.
Thank you. And Denise, I will ask you then if there are any other points that you would like to respond to at this time.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So some of the things that I've heard today about some of the mitigation that we might be able to work towards about like building materials and things like that and placement. I mean, those are things that would be great for the applicant and me to talk a little bit more about, so I could get a bit more information about how we could implement that in this. So it may be part of a site plan or something else that we implement those things. So I just wanted to suggest that more detail, I think we still need to glean from from the applicant's plans of things that they might be able, tools that they may have available to them for dealing with noise. And like I said, there was some videos that were shared, so council may want to review those. And if anything comes out of that, we can certainly bring all that material back as part of the follow-up staff report when we get to the point of making a recommendation. So we'll address all of those things that are still kind of a little bit of moving parts, that things that maybe council's just getting a chance to see now, probably later today or tomorrow when you get a chance to open your emails and take a look at that.
Thank you, Denise. And now it's time for closing comments. Stephen and Moyer, is there anything else you wish to add?
Sorry, thank you. I just want to address one issue that did come up, and I don't want council or your worship to have an improper view on this. Is we are licensed, we're a registered licensed business in the province of Ontario, and we have an incorporation that manages the business as well. We are fully insured. The dogs are insured, the neighbors are insured, the clouds are insured. If you saw my insurance bill, you'd believe it. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but it's certainly important to remember, we are licensed to do what we're doing right now. What we're asking for is only the night boarding. Everything else, it is a permissible use on the property, and that we do have business licenses to accommodate that.
Thank you very much for adding that, Stephen. Thank you for attending this meeting and sharing your thoughts on these applications. This matter will now be referred back to Meaford Development Services staff to follow up on any additional information required from the applicant based on the matters raised today. Once staff are satisfied that they have all necessary information needed to provide a recommendation on the applications, detailed planning reports will be brought back to Meaford to assist us in our decision-making. These reports will evaluate how the proposal does or does not satisfy the provincial, county, and municipal policies that must be considered as part of council's decision. It will also explore the various public and agency comments received regarding the application, noting those tools which may be applied in order to address concerns raised and to mitigate potential impacts on nearby properties. If you would like to receive mailed notice of a future decision on these files, please provide your contact information to the Planning Services Division by email at planning@meaford.ca. And that ends the first meeting of the day. And we will just take a moment or two to move over into meeting number 2. Does council wish a break at this point in time, or do you want to carry on? We'll take a 5-minute break. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We will call the second matter of our planning meeting today to order at 6:07. And this meeting number 2 has to do with parts 19 and 20 of reference plan 16R36, part of lot 10, concession 2, St. Vincent Township. Stephen and Jean Williams. Zoning bylaw amendment, file numbers Z01-2023. I will now call today's public meeting to order. This is a public meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford to consider site-specific amendments to the Municipality of Meaford's official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for lands including parts 19 and 20 of reference plan 16R36, part of lot 10, concession 2, St. Vincent, concession 2, St. Vincent. This meeting is a mandatory part of the planning process, which has been set out by the Planning Act. Based on the rules in the Act, there must be at least 20 days' notice given to the residents within 120 meters of the property. Notice of applications was issued on April the 18th, 2023, giving the required 20 days' notice. Let's get started. I will ask Meredith Gillespie, planner, to give a presentation on the application and to provide us with any public and agency comments that have been received to date. Over to you, Meredith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So let's get started here. Our application under consideration today is for, as you can see, part of lot 10 on concession 2 in the geographic township of St. Vincent, and it is parts 19 and 20 of that survey plan there, 16R36. So this property is not municipally addressed, so we're going to use the legal description to reference it. So as Denise mentioned, there are a few reasons we're here today. We don't need to go too much into detail here, but it is important to understand that we're here to hear the presentation that I'm going to give with details about the subject lands and the planning applications, give a forum for anyone from the public to comment on the proposal, and also to give the applicant an opportunity to speak to more details on the proposal. So speaking of the proposal, the applicant is proposing to create a building envelope on the subject property. And in order to do that, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. If approved, a portion of the lands that is currently designated as environmental protection would be rezoned to country residential with a holding provision 1. We'll see that a little later in the mapping. As to where the subject lands are located, they are located off of the third line, which is an open and maintained municipal road, but there's currently no driveway to access the property. We can discuss that slightly a bit further. I think issues of access will be addressed at a later stage in the process, so they won't really be the focus of today's application. Surrounding the lands to the north and south and west are vacant forested lands, and to the east is open space. It's kind of a grassy area you may be familiar with if you've driven down the third line. The area is largely treed, and it's in the area is in a relatively natural state. The property is vegetated and it slopes generally northward before it drops off sharply at the Algonquin Ridge feature, which is located near the northern property line. So the subject lands are designated as rural and hazard lands in the Grey County official plan. Much like in Denise's presentation, we won't go into all of those permitted uses in the rural land use designation. But in hazard lands, buildings and structures are generally not permitted, which is part of the reason why we're going through the zoning amendment to make those changes to the official plan and to the Meaford official plan and the zoning bylaw. And there are significant woodlands on the subject property. As you can see, the significant woodlands are the area that's in green. And so we don't have county comments yet on the file, but like Denise, I kind of requested the comments and I will provide them to council and mayor and council when we have them. As for how the lands are designated in the Meaford official plan, the lands are designated as rural and environmental protection. Single detached dwellings are permitted in rural lands, but in lands permitted as designated as environmental protection, buildings and structures are generally not permitted. So minor changes to the extent of the environmental protection designation can be made without a official plan amendment. So today we're going to talk about a zoning bylaw amendment, but we aren't discussing an official plan amendment because the changes to the zoning those changes can be reflected in the official plan without going through the application for an official plan amendment. So if approved in this application, the area, a portion of the area that's designated as environmental protection would be reduced in order to allow for a building envelope, which is outside of the area currently designated environmental protection. So here's the current zoning on the lands. As you can see, the vast majority of it is environmental protection at the moment. And then that small corner is country residential with holding provision 1. And so if the application were approved, there would be a reduction in the area designated as environmental protection to allow for a building envelope to be created for future development. But as I mentioned, the lands are currently vacant. There is a holding provision 1 on the lands that are designated country residential, which limits development until the hold is applied to be removed through council. So that hold would also be applied to the building envelope. So council would have to approve the removal of that hold before any building was allowed to be started or begun, or before the applicant would be allowed to apply for a building permit. So to summarize where we are in the process, we are at the public meeting today, after which we, much like with the OPA ZBA we heard about previously, we're going to do our review as staff and we will make our recommendations to council via staff report. And that involves hearing from all the different agencies that we circulate to. Council will make their decision to adopt or not to adopt the zoning bylaw amendment. There will be the appeal period, and after which there will be the application would be final if there aren't any appeals. If you wish to keep engaged in the process, you can submit comments to planning@meaford.ca. That's our email address. And you can also make a request in writing to be on the list in order to be notified of the decision that will be made in the future on this file. So that's the end of my presentation. And then I would like to also summarize some of the comments that have been received on this file. So we received comments from Historic Saugeen Métis with no concerns or objections on this file. And no public comments have been received on this file. Okay, and we'll address that. No comments have been received from Grey County at this time, as I mentioned. The comments I'd like to delve a little bit further into are from Grey Sawbull Conservation Authority. And so as part of the application, the applicant submitted comments received from Grey Sawbull Conservation Authority as part of the pre-consultation for this file that the applicants did with Grey Sawbull Conservation Authority. And so we and my Meaford planning staff have received confirmation from the GSCA Grace Alba Conservation Authority, that the current proposal is consistent with the information that was submitted as part of the pre-consultation. And so those earlier comments stand for today's meeting. And as part of those comments, the GSCA produced revised mapping of the area that is currently designated as natural hazard. And so the GSCA would support the revised mapping being adopted as a schedule to the proposed bylaw when it gets considered at a later date by council. So I'll just briefly summarize the comments that were provided by Grace Alba Conservation Authority when they, in their pre-consultation review for you. So GSCA is supportive of an application to reduce the extent of the hazard delineation in the zoning bylaw and official plan, provided that they align with the map that was submitted by that was created by the GSCA. So those pre-consultation comments I will circulate to council so that you have the comments and you also have the map, because that way you're able to see the area that GSCA has identified as sort of revised mapping. They note that a further reduction of the hazard mapping would only be supported through an appropriate geotechnical and slope stability study. And it would also, further reduction of the hazard mapping would also represent a greater encroachment into the mapped significant woodland. And it would also likely require the support of an environmental impact study, or EIS. They note that development should generally be directed away from the mapped natural hazard area, and it should be left in its vegetated state to maintain the slope stability. This is because there is a slope on the northern side of the subject property, and that slope is on the mapping shown to be left as a natural hazard area, and so development would not be permitted in that area. Also, the property is regulated under Ontario Regulation 15106 due to that steep slope feature of the Algonquin Ridge, and the adjacent watercourse. So what that means is the permit would be required from Grace Alba Conservation Authority in the future for any development or site alteration. And at a minimum, GSCA would require an engineered lot grading and drainage plan to support a permit application for a new dwelling, private services, and any associated site alterations. Just two more things to note. There's a recommendation from the GSCA that erosion control fencing be installed along the refined hazard boundary to ensure that no impacts are made to the vegetated slope. And they've also had made a comment about the species that may or may not be present on the property. So they note that there was a Massasauga, northern coyotes, and eastern ribbon snake have been noted on or in the vicinity of the property. And so they've said that if they are identified on the property, that the applicant should consult with the Ministry of Environmental Conservation and Parks to determine any requirements that are related to those species. That is all of my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Meredith. There is one pre-registration for this meeting, and these registrants are Stephen and Jean Williams. You now have the opportunity to speak.
Right now, we don't really have any comments, but we agree with everything that Meredith has gone through. Yeah, that's about it. We don't have anything to add.
Thank you very much, Jean. There have been no other virtual pre-registrations for this meeting by members of the public. Therefore, I will ask if any of the members present wish to speak. Do you wish to speak, sir? If so, please come forward to the microphone and Meredith will turn the microphone on for you, and please state your name.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Rogers. I did send something into planning at Meaford.ca as well on the, that would have been on the 19th. But we're in the adjacent property. And we're just curious more in terms of what will happen with access to the property. You had some pictures that showed the layout of the property, but it's right beside something that's called Holmes Lookout. There's a little parkette on the third line that you might know as you go up the third line. And currently the people that own it, if they want to access the property, park on the parkette and then go into their property. That's perhaps fine. I don't know what the public access to the park should be, but if it's developed, where would the access to the property actually be? I think one of the, it's unfortunate that it's not showing on the screens, but to the south of the property, it looks like there's a road allowance of some sort. And would it be there, or because if it's not there, then it would have to be, I'm not sure how they could actually access the property. So it's a question.
Mr. Rogers, I believe Denise would like to speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We actually don't know what access would be possible for this lot. It hasn't been reviewed and it wasn't part of the application. It certainly came up in our early discussions because there is no road frontage. There are road allowances in front of the property, but they're not constructed. And so there is no legal access at this time. So it's something that would have to be reviewed at a later time.
Right.
Thank you, Denise.
Okay, then along the same lines, there are two properties to the east, and one seems to be a kind of orphaned property. So I think the question would be, what would be the general access for those properties as well? And would development of this property then open the door for developments of the adjacent properties further to the east? It's just another question, or do we just go through the same exercise with each property that would like to be allowed? So that's another question, I suppose.
And thank you for that, Mr. Rogers. And that will be considered by our planning department unless Denise wishes to add comment at this point.
I'm blocking my own computer there. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think I understand what other lots are in there. There's certainly other lots that don't have any road frontage currently within that general area that were part of a previous, I'll call it a subdivision, and I'm using that term very loosely, a previous plan of subdivision from before the subdivision control was in place in Ontario. Anybody that is maybe constructing a road along a public roadway that would add, could be added onto, could affect other people down the way. So if the owner of this property were able to construct a road to their property, which is what a developer always has to do at their cost, and someone else could just take it from there and add on, then that certainly would benefit them. But we don't know at this point, because it hasn't been studied or designed, where the access would come from and who it could benefit. So we don't actually know the answer. And if it's something that anybody is interested in speaking with planning services about, we do get contacted quite a bit about lands up there. So we'd be happy to kind of outline the process.
Yeah. I think it's the maps that you did display show the property clearly, but what's not shown is how it's even feasible for there to be access to the property, because the property immediately to the west of it is this little park called Holmes Lookout, and then to the immediate north of it. It is a steep escarpment. The two properties that are immediately to the north do have signs at the old Highway 26 that indicate that they are have been accepted for development. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea, but it does seem to suggest that the two properties immediately, but there'd be no access from below because it's the escarpment that's there. So they can't get access from the north, they can't get access from the west, they can't get access from the east because it is this development that Denise was just mentioning. So it leaves kind of one further direction, I think, which is on the south side. And it looks to me like that's some sort of road allowance. But I would be curious on what it is and what does it suggest would happen in the future. So there's that question. And I think I think what you've indicated is you don't have the answer for that yet. The other question was, I just don't exactly know what holding symbol signifies. That we were confused by that. It sounds like it's a two-step process. First, they lift the environmental protection, and then they lift a holding section or something like that. But could you explain what is meant by this holding symbol?
Certainly, Denise will be happy to answer your question, Mr. Rogers.
Through you, Madam Chair. I will. That's fine as well. Yeah, so holding provisions or holding symbols, as they're also called, are applied to lands, various lands throughout the municipality. There's different types of holding provisions. So the process to remove them is there's an application that's made to planning services. And then depending on the type of hold, there's different processes, but it's not, holding provisions can be applied to any kind of zone. And so it's not necessarily directly related to the environmental protection. But yeah, that
Okay.
answers the question.
And then my last questions for now would be water. Is that we're along that line using wells, and when that larger development was being considered, there were studies that were undertaken to see what the impact is on downstream users. And I'm just wondering, this one is just a little bit upstream from us, assuming that the water tables run that way. And I'm just wondering what sort of studies are done to see the impact of someone else using well water in that area.
And over to you, Denise.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So through you, I think those are great questions. And certainly when we're creating lots, we do ask those questions. In this case, though, the lot is already existing. So we're not, because it's not materially part of the application itself, which is only looking at, is there too much EP? Is it overstated in reality, which was done as a desktop exercise? That's the only area of the application we're looking at. So the application was to change the EP to country residential. So we didn't actually look at any water studies or road access for this particular application. Yes, they will need to determine the road access at a later time, but because the applicants were not ready to do that, it just wasn't part of this application. And this particular hold H1 relates specifically to not allowing someone to build or get a building permit until that's dealt with. So it will be something that council will see in the future. In terms of water, like I said, we don't have any information about what this applicant might do or a new owner might do to get water to their site. But because the lot already exists, it's not something that we normally would review. If we were trying to sever this now, we definitely would require information to demonstrate that they could provide water to the site. But we can't retroactively do that, unfortunately.
So just a final comment, I mean, obviously they want to change the environmental protection section because they want to build on it. It's not because it's not an academic exercise. So so understanding how they could actually build on it is I would have thought an interesting question to ask even at this stage, but I don't know how your planning process works. So thank you very much.
No, and thank you for your comments and questions, Mr. Rogers. It's appreciated. Next, I will ask if any members of council would like to Oh, sorry, I apologize. Would you like to speak, sir?
Yeah.
Please come forward and state your name.
Yeah, my name is Wayne Parsons. And if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of that main map, that's my house there on that corner. I have the same concerns, of course, my neighbor. And the one thing I find strange though is that these other lots, I've heard this tonight, that those other lots were stranded, I guess you might say, because the subdivision was deemed, I guess, impractical or unsafe. I've had times where it's property behind me, it was zoned hazard as well too, and suddenly your property changes. What I would like to know is where the red square is it's part of it was mentioned as being hazardous, but I would like to know the percentage of it that's zoned hazardous. If there indeed is a percentage.
Mhm. And Meredith, are you aware of that percentage?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the way it works kind of in the planning sphere is that lands are not designated in percentages per se. But in the presentation that I gave, I hope it was fairly clear that the majority of the lands are designated as environmental protection in the Meaford zoning bylaw. And those lands are also called hazard in the Grey County official plan. So you can kind of see them as interchangeably used.
They are interchangeable. So in effect, most of all that green is zone hazard. Whether it be environmental protection on it is zone hazard. And I know my experience here is when it's zone hazard, that's pretty well it's done for a reason. And I'd like to know going back to the original reasons why it was zone hazard and bring that into it, why it would be a zone hazard, and therefore have an influence on whether you decide to allow it to be a residential. That's all I ask.
Thank you.
This one other thing too, I saw your meetings and coming up. So really, this is just the very beginning, isn't it? Is that correct?
Correct. There is still a big portion of the process. Yes.
Lots to go through. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Excuse me, Madam Chair. My husband had something he wanted to comment on from the previous person that just spoke, Stephen Rogers.
Okay, so am I speaking to Mrs. Williams again?
Yes, and my husband, Stephen Williams, would like to speak.
Okay. Margaret?
I will ask the manager of planning. I think at this time, we wouldn't normally have a conversation back and forth. I think applicants have had their turn and the script is fairly clear that we hear from the public, and there's certainly other ways for public participation through this whole process as the planning team had outlined, but I will see if there's a different response.
And Denise?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Deputy Clerk is correct. So what the applicants, since they're online, what they can do, and maybe they aren't aware, is they can provide some follow-up at the end. So if they just want to hold on to any questions or comments about some of the things raised at the meeting, they could address them at the end after we get through all the comments. Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, Denise. So we will come back to you, okay? And next, I will ask if any members of council have any questions. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, a comment and a question. Looking at the map, it looks like there's a 66-foot road allowance between the lot and the park, going straight north to the highway. There's a road allowance there, correct? So that's the only access they're going to be able to use. But there is a road allowance there between the park and the lot, 66 feet. Having said that, I've never heard the term Algonquin Bridge feature. What is a Algonquin Bridge feature?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor. So the Algonquin Ridge feature is something that was identified in the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority's comments. So the way I understand it is they have identified the steep slope feature located on the subject property, and they have identified that as being part of the Algonquin Ridge. So the site does have a steep slope to the north, but as I mentioned, the hazard mapping and the revised hazard mapping provided by GSCA has that area retained as natural hazard area. So it wouldn't be, that's not the area that would be, that area would remain environmental protection, were this application approved.
And any other questions from council? Not at this point in time. So I'll come back to you, Denise and Meredith. Is there anything you wish to add at this point?
I just wanted to clarify about what is meant by environmental protection and hazard. It's not actually protecting the environment. It's a little bit of a misnomer there where it says environmental protection sounds like we're protecting the environment. It's actually protection from the environment for cases where someone might build something and it might slide down the hill or be too close to a water feature and be flooded out. So the environmental protection and hazard are areas where it's unsafe to build. And those layers that we get as a mapping layer, they come in modern times through a GIS mapping layer by the Conservation Authority directly. And it's their best estimate of where those features are. So they include slopes, they include wet areas and unstable soils. And in this case, the applicant has reached out to the Conservation Authority to do a bit of ground truthing on that map. And we've got that ground truthing in response. And they did provide a map, which was part of their application from the Conservation Authority showing what they consider the actual hazard or EP area. And it is significantly less. It's certainly on quite a bit of the property still. Anybody who has a lot in this area who could reduce their EP or environmental protection could go through the same process. And we do get this from time to time. I think particularly in this area, people hadn't been doing it because some of those lots people haven't asked to develop them. So that may be why. And I don't probably, if Meredith has anything else to wrap up with, I'll let her do so. But I just wanted to clarify that because I think people hear environmental protection and they think it's to protect the environment specifically, and it's the other way around. It's to protect us from the environment. Those other environmental protection things that we think of as actually protecting the environment are the significant woodlands and then areas of natural and scientific significance and eventually significant wetlands and things like that. So
thanks for that, Denise. Meredith, anything to add? No, all good.
No, thank you.
Thank you. So I will come back to the applicants. Stephen or Jean, would you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to just clarify about the access and where a driveway would be. On the southwest corner, it would be 6-foot road allowance. We have a deeded right of way to that. And the H1 is something new that had been added since we purchased the property, just to protect the city from us agreeing that we're going to clean the snow in the winter time. So it's right off the road. There's a culvert already installed. In 1999, I drove right in. It's there, believe me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So we will close this meeting. Thank you for attending this meeting this evening and sharing your thoughts on these applications. This matter will now be referred back to Meaford Development Services staff to follow up on any additional information required from the applicant based on the matters raised today. Once staff are satisfied that they have all necessary information needed to provide a recommendation on the applications, detailed planning reports will be brought back to Meaford Council to assist us in our decision making. These reports will evaluate how the proposal does or does not satisfy the provincial, county, and municipal policies that must be considered as part of council's decision. It will also explore the various public and agency comments received regarding the application, noting those tools which may be applied in order to address concerns raised and to mitigate potential impacts on nearby properties. If you would like to receive mailed notice of a future decision on these files, please provide your contact information to the Planning Services Division by email at planning@meaford.ca. And that concludes the business for this evening, and I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.